welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that is willing to guarantee that Lone Depot Park will see a champion this year. Will it be the Marlins? I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about that team in our NL East preview, which is happening on this episode. That is right. Pitchers and catchers are reporting. We've got about 7 weeks to go until the start of the baseball season. We can feel it. We can smell it. We can almost taste it. It's happening, and we are so excited to be starting our division previews this week. We're going to go through every division, devote an episode to each one, and talk about all the offseason moves, how it made teams better, how it made teams worse, and how we think the divisions will end up. And today we start with the NL East. But first, we are going to talk about a couple of quick things that happened over the course of the week that are very interesting. And we're going to start with more World Baseball Classic news, more like we discussed on last week's show, more bummer Baseball Classic news. We talked about Team Puerto Rico being decimated by, insurance troubles last week. And Team USA has lost a significant contributor to injury over the course of the last week. Corbin Carroll will not play for Team USA in the WBC. He's got a hand injury of some kind that seems to be plaguing a few different people across the league. So, let's start there. So Corbin Carroll's out for Team USA. So the question on everyone's mind right now is who should replace him. There's a bevy of choices. There is a large pool of, talent at that position that can come in to, fill that spot. Who do we like to replace Corbin Carroll in the WBC?
Well, there are, like you said, there are so many options. Team USA is like, most of Major League Baseball would be a choice. But if I was going to pick and I was going to take off my unbiased journalist take, what am I saying? Cap. I would say my guy, Roman Anthony, would be my number one choice because he's my boy. He's probably my favorite player right now because the Red Sox are, a little bit lacking in the star player department these days. And so I would just love to see it. Alex Cora said he is, quote, very in the mix to be a replacement. So seems like he wouldn't say no if it was offered. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But he would be my pick. I know there's tons of good options. I know Matt is going to present his option, another good choice, but I just love my boy Roman, and I think it would be awesome to set up his sophomore campaign by showing up on the big stage of the WBC.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Roman Anthony feels like he's got that future star, and putting in these young stars and these up and coming guys in something like the WBC is a cool way to platform them. And I think entirely the argument you just gave can basically be copy and pasted for Jackson Merrill as well. Just another young guy, signed long-term already, had superstar flashes at both of his first 2 years. And I feel like, he's a guy who he's a genuine, he's one of those, I love baseball types of guys. He's old school about it. And I feel like he would just fit right in, going on a team that, represents the U.S. kind of playing around the world and stuff. But you can't go wrong. I mean, both dudes are studs. Both guys would be a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything negative to say about Roman Anthony. I'd love to see it be one of these two guys, biasly or unbiasedly. I just think they both represent really cool kind of future of baseball type of outfielders.
Yeah, and then there's a couple more guys that kind of fit that mold, like James Wood with the Nationals could be that guy, or Wyatt Langford with the Rangers. If you want to go more established guys, Cody Bellinger would be an option. He just re-signed with the Yankees this offseason. Kyle Tucker obviously signed a big deal with the Dodgers. And then, Dallas, I'll say it. I'd like to see Mike Trout out there. I mean, I don't know if he's actually our best option at this moment, but that's our guy. This is probably like, if he's not going to do it this year, is he going to do it 3 or 4 years from now whenever they do the next one? I doubt it.
I mean, it could be Taylor Ward as well.
Mm-hmm. Orioles legend himself. No, I mean, we talked about Mike Trout not being in on the official roster last week on our baseball show. That was my stinger for last week. And when I heard about the Corbin Carroll injury, I was like, well, they're going to need to. I feel like they're going to want to pick somebody who can play in his place, which means he was going to play a lot in that tournament probably, and Mike Trout probably wouldn't play a lot in the tournament if they put him on the team. But it would be nice to see him out there, and we've got another chance maybe to fit him in there. I would love to see that, but I'm not holding my breath. I'll say with the all the options that they have and the struggles that Mike Trout has had getting into on the roster anyway. He might have also been an insurance problems guy, maybe. So, but this does kind of feel like the last chance for it, unless like a WBC comes up the offseason before what everyone knows will be his last year or whatever. Like he just goes out there for fun, and takes a couple at bats, here and there in the early stages of the tournament, maybe. But so that's kind of what I expect. But I mean, it'll be great. I think whoever they pick is going to have a great time and is going to be a good player, because like this team really wants to do this, and with the pitchers they've got on board this year, they really have to try to pick a really nice replacement, because if they can't, they got to be able to try to do it this year, because they've got everybody lined up. So we'll see who they pick to replace him. They haven't picked anybody yet. We thought maybe before we started this recording they might pick somebody with the tournament coming up so soon, but maybe they need a little bit more time. So we'll see who they pick, and we'll talk about it here when they do pick somebody, and we'll talk about our reactions to that. But as of right now, bummer for Corbin Carroll. He was going to be really fast, really exciting. One of those players that can really break a game open for you by getting on base, getting in scoring position very quickly. And now he won't be there. The Team USA doesn't have a shortage of those kind of players on the team, but it would have been nice to have them. So next thing, on the other side of the player age spectrum, here, we had a player who has been around a long, long time go back to the team that he started his career with, and that's Justin Verlander. He signed with the Detroit Tigers, 1 year, $13 million deal. He's going back to Detroit to join a rotation that looks really nice, looks really good. And so, the main question that I have is, how can Justin Verlander help this team compete? Well, they still can, because on the horizon is some, things that are uncertain for the Tigers. So they have a window open right now. So how can Justin Verlander help them compete while they still can? Or is maybe that not what this was about?
I mean, first of all, it's awesome. I love a homecoming, especially for a player who's like undoubtedly a Hall of Famer when he retires and all that. But if you think about it, it makes sense. Like, regardless of the history, there was really two types of teams that could sign Justin Verlander this offseason. It was either a team like the Tigers, who's competitive, where he'll be a back-end starter, or a team that really doesn't have much hope and they just want some veteran innings and maybe a guy who can like help a young pitching staff or something. And I think for him, this makes way more sense. He has earned the right to ring chase, and I'm not saying the Tigers are like number one contenders, but they took the Mariners to 15 innings in Game 5 of the DS. Who knows what would have happened after that? Tarik Skubal is the best pitcher in baseball right now. They signed Framber Valdez, and Verlander is a great, fourth or fifth option for them this year. Well, I say great. He had a sneaky good second half of the year after kind of a bad start with the Giants last year. I know he's 43 years old. He's chasing down 300 wins. He's like 34 away, which is more than one season for sure. Probably more than 2 seasons, but I mean, I like it. I like it for the Tigers. I like it for Justin Verlander. And, Skubal is a year away from free agency. He probably tests that, whatever. Verlander is going to get a 1-year deal for the rest of his baseball career. So, the window is the window. The Tigers have a lot of young players on the offensive side. We'll see, but they're going to be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for him too, like, he's made it very clear that is one of his top goals, is to try and hit that 300 win mark. And we've seen, and again, I don't want to compare the Tigers to the Dodgers or to any of these teams that kind of have the luxury to do this, but like when you sign a guy like Verlander, if you feel like your team is good enough, you can kind of put a couple other guys. You can maybe be a little safer with Skubal or with Valdez if you don't want to push them, with their innings. You can have him be just an innings eater and not really have to play much of a factor in the postseason. But if he can just eat innings in the regular season, it gives him the opportunity to chase those wins. He gets to play on a team that most likely is going to win a lot of games, and will eventually be in the postseason where he can probably just head straight to the bullpen. And look at Kershaw. Like, he was not going to pitch this year in the postseason, barring an extreme circumstance, which he ended up having to do. But like, I could see him doing the same thing and just chasing those like last regular season kind of records. And this is the perfect place to do it. I mean, you get to go back to your original team. You get the zero pressure of being a back end starter. And with a team like the Tigers, who have such an explosive offense, he doesn't need to have his best stuff to still potentially rack up wins, And so that's where I think we could see him try and push himself and just be like, could he get back to 150, 180? Could he do 200 innings in a season if they just let him? Maybe, maybe he could. And I think that's how I feel like I could see him helping this team, is really just giving them enough cushion to try and head into playoffs as healthy as possible, because he can just eat innings. I feel like veterans can do that pretty effectively.
Yeah, totally. I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most, just seeing, the first start of his over there, the first start of his back over there, the crowd's going to be on fire. And it's going to be a big, a big spectacle to watch, and just see what kind of energy it gives him. Last year, it just didn't really look all the way right, kind of where he was at and what he was doing. And now that he's going to be back in Detroit, it's going to look right. It'll probably feel right. And so I'll be interested to see if the Detroit crowd gives him any extra juice, as he starts, yet another season for him. And we'll talk more about the Tigers in our preview of that division and what we think is going to happen for them. But, I think this is definitely one of those things that's going to help, the team around him be a little better, and also help the fan base just recharge for another season, trying to chase that title. Because for Detroit fans, it can kind of feel like it's still kind of newer to Tigers fans, a little bit, having hope every season, for multiple seasons in a row. But it can get to this thing of where you're like, well, 2 years ago wasn't the year, last year wasn't the year, maybe this year. And then you can kind of get into that energy. But now that Verlander's back, I feel like it'll be like, no, this feels like it's gotta be, it's written that this is the year for us. So, it helps that too. So I'll be interested to see how the fans, react, and who didn't toss all those. If anyone didn't toss their jersey, from back in the day, I want to see those old jerseys come out, for that game. And then a whole new generation gets to have a Verlander Tigers jersey, which is, really fun. But yeah, so good vibes for the Detroit Tigers and Justin Verlander. The vibes in the NL East, we'll talk about them. We'll see, what the vibes are for this division, but we are going to get into it. This is our division preview episode for the NL East. We wanted to start with a fun division, a division with a lot of contending teams in it, at least teams that are supposed to contend. We'll talk a little bit about how that turned out last year, right off the top. But NL East, just to get us started, what do you guys feel about the NL East this year, just generally? What are your thoughts on these? What are your feelings about these teams? What does the NL East make you feel as a division? What do you think about when you think about this division here?
I mean, this division, like, my first instinct is like, oh, tough division, good teams in it. And then I actually, remember what happened last year. And I don't know. I don't know if any of them really have good vibes going on right now. Like, it's a new season and all that, and that's great. You can have hope, and I'm sure there's optimism, but like how last year ended for all of them, and how the offseason kind of went for all of them, none of them had like the A+ knock it out of the park offseason, and none of their seasons ended the way they exactly wanted to. You could argue the Marlins, and we'll talk about them in a second, but yeah, it's just kind of an interesting, who's good, like last year we were saying they're all kind of good, and this year it's like, well, who's going to be the good one? At least that's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way, right? And even you look at last year's standings and you see right at the top Philly with 96 wins. Like that's a great season. And yet it felt underwhelming somehow. And then the offseason, like you said, has felt underwhelming. And I look at this division, I used to think that this was like a really top heavy division because you kind of just felt like the Nationals, kind of a bottom of the barrel team. I mean, the Marlins were a surprise, I think, to a lot of people last year. You would have assumed, I mean, they were your prediction to be the worst team in baseball last year. And, you would assume they're bottom of the barrel. So you're like, okay, Phillies, they could do, close to 100 wins. Braves, they might be close to 100 wins. The Mets, they kind of had their magic run for a little bit, but then it was bottomed out. I feel like this division this year, at least the way I'm feeling about it, I feel like it's just really compressed down or and up in a way. I just don't think that it's going to be this massive difference between first and last like it was. I don't know. I just think really the top has come down, the bottom has come up, and now it kind of just sits in this they all got to come out somewhere, but we'll see. We'll see where you think they come out. I know where I think they will.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's tarry no further. Let us get into it here. So we always start our division preview for every division with where we've been, right? 2025 standings. Okay. So first place in the NL East last year was the Philadelphia Phillies, 96 wins, 66 losses. They lost to the Dodgers in the NLDS 3-1. They were this division's only playoff team. The next, second place, New York Mets, 83 wins, 79 losses. Miami Marlins finished third of all things, 79 and 83. And finally, we're mentioning the Braves, one of the better teams in all of baseball. So we think 76 wins, 86 losses, a true disaster for them. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then last place, the Washington Nationals, 66 wins, 96 losses. So the exact reverse record of their first place to their last place. I thought that was kind of cool. So now we've talked about where you've been, we're going to talk about where we're going. So this is our offseason recap and our preview for their 2026 season as a result of those moves. So start with the Phillies. We're going to go in finishing order here. So Phillies are up, another season gone, another opportunity to win a championship lost for this Phillies team. One of the favorites entering the 2025 season. Everyone wondered if this was the year that they would finally put it all together. And all season long, it looked like they were going to have a real chance to challenge the Dodgers in the postseason. They went 4-2 head-to-head against the defending champions and eventual champions in the regular season. But when the light shone the brightest, the Phillies suffered a heartbreaking loss in Game 4 of the NLDS and were eliminated from World Series contention by the Dodgers themselves. So What does a team that has come so close so often do to get over the hump in 2026? Well, let's talk about the moves they made. Drew, can you take us through the players who are – I didn't really know how to word all this because I wanted to include players who were on the team last year that were re-signed and trades as well. Talk about the players who are on this team who maybe wouldn't have been beforehand, and then talk about the teams who were on it that aren't on it anymore for the Phillies.
Yeah, so the two biggest free agent moves for the Phillies were two guys who were already on the team. It was Kyle Schwarber, the DH, who's, arguably their best player. He got second place in MVP for the National League last year. And then JT Realmuto, the catcher, who, he's over the hill, but he's still a solid option back there. And they didn't really have another option, so they needed him back. And then two additions from the outside. Adolis Garcia on a 1-year deal. They're trying to, find that upside that he showed in 2023 when the Rangers won the World Series. And Brad Keller, who emerged last year in the Cubs bullpen as a legitimate weapon in the bullpen. Notable departures, though: Ranger Suarez, starting pitcher; Harrison Bader, the outfielder they got at the deadline; Max Kepler, who didn't really do much for them last year; David Robertson, reliever; Matt Strahm, the reliever; and then Nick Castellanos. We knew all offseason he'd be gone. It finally happened today. He was released. They could not find a trade for him. So he will likely be somewhere next year, but it will not be on the Phillies.
Yeah, I feel like that's the place to start, right? Like the Nick Castellanos thing, it's timely, it's interesting-ish. So let's start with that departure. Obviously, I think we all are in agreement that it doesn't necessarily mean much. It doesn't move the needle for us on the Phillies as a whole, like him not being on the team anymore. There's a reason he was, outright released and all that stuff. But what do you guys make about what we're hearing about the situation? Like it's really messy, this breakup between Castellanos and the Phillies. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I was reading an article today about, kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff that I wasn't totally aware of, but I knew that the vibes were bad with him for some reason, and it turns out the stories that we're getting is that he was basically a prima donna in a lot of ways. Like, he expected certain treatment, special treatment, because he was a highly paid player, but he was on a team full of highly paid players, and like, look around and it's pretty obvious that he was not the star of this team. But he expected to be higher in the batting order. He expected not to be taken out of games for defensive reasons. He was, not to be platooned and all that stuff. And, there's a story where he got taken out of a game and then came back into the dugout with a beer in his hand and was yelling at the manager. And it's just like stuff like that where it's like, what, like, at the end of the day, dude, like, know your place and know that, maybe you're not the best defender in right field. Maybe it makes more sense to help the team win if they took you out, or maybe it makes more sense for you to bat lower in the lineup, or this or that. And so, he's had a decent career. He's had some nice years, but it seems like his ego is inflated to a point that I don't quite understand, given his track record as a player.
Yeah, I'm like, because I haven't done too much research into him because, to be honest, I didn't really care that much about him. But it's interesting to hear that because, obviously he made a name for himself just by being, kind of memed as the guy who hits home runs during tragedies. And, there's some fun to be had with that. And sure, throughout his career, he's had solid pop. But, even at his best, he was a defensive liability. And now it's like, okay, dude, you're getting older. Your bat was, arguably below average, but it was not up to what we needed it to be for him to still be getting regular playing time, let alone batting high up in the order. That's crazy to hear. And I understand you're a high paid player, but Yeah, it's like you said, the Phillies have one of the highest payrolls. Like, look at Bryce Harper, look at Trey Turner, look at, a number of the pitchers, look at now Kyle Schwarber. Like, you're a high paid player, but you're like an average paid player amongst the starting players of the Phillies. Like, that's just a crazy, like, ego to have. And it's so funny. Literally just something like that. There was part of me that was like, oh, dude, maybe the Padres take a flyer on a guy like this. We might need some DH, but I'm like, dude, I don't want that. That sucks. I don't like hearing that about players, especially when they're just like locker room and dugout like cancers. Like you can't be sitting in the dugout drinking a beer in the middle of the game yelling at your manager. You can't be doing that. If you're going to drink a beer and yell at your manager, do it behind closed doors. And then I don't care that much. But like, that's crazy, man. That sucks. We'll see where he ends up, but that sucks.
Drinking a beer and yelling at my manager. What is it? Friday night at my house or something? I mean, come on. You got to blow off some steam somehow. You got to blow
your manager's at your place, dude.
Well, that's why I'm yelling. Get out of here. What are you doing here? Look, okay, so, yeah, the whole Nick Castellanos, I was kind of hoping they wouldn't release him by the time of the recording because it would be funny that he was essentially just like shadow banned. Like he was like, they were like, please don't come to spring training. You've heard of people, non-roster invites to spring training. You are a roster non-invite to spring training. Yeah, that's what you are. So get out of here. But they did pull the trigger. So, I had to get that out there anyway. But okay, so enough about that. Let's talk about impact. So impact of these moves, right? So let's talk the positive first. So who of the people they, added, quote unquote, is going to make the biggest impact, do you think, for them this year?
I mean, it seems like kind of obvious and not like, it's Kyle Schwarber. Like the other three, like major additions, if you even want to call them major, are role players. Real Muto's solid. He's had a great career, but he's not one of the elite catchers in baseball anymore. Adolis Garcia, we've seen more bad Adolis Garcia than we've seen good Adolis Garcia. And then Brad Keller is a nice piece, but at the end of the day, a middle reliever can only do so much for you. And Kyle Schwarber is one of the best hitters in baseball. He's certainly one of the best power hitters in baseball. They needed to get him back, and it was the first move they did. It was the first big free agent signing of the offseason, if I remember correctly. So Kyle Schwarber is the guy here. I think the Phillies in general, like, this is gonna be kind of a theme through, like, I can think of a few teams throughout Major League Baseball that this is kind of the case for. Like, for better or for worse, they're kind of running it back, and you could argue that that's a fine strategy when they easily won their division. They won by 13 games last year, but at the same time, they didn't get better. And in fact, I think they're a worse team than last year. I think the biggest subtraction is Ranger Suarez from their rotation. Yeah. And they've got Andrew Painter, who's, like a prospect. He's supposed to be good, but like, it's really tough to rely on young starting pitching, to come right in and do super well. Zach Wheeler's coming off an injury. They have still some solid starters there, but like, it's just not the rotation that we feared for the last few years. It's not the case anymore. And their lineup, it's a lot of household names that are not getting any younger. So I love Schwarber. I think he's still going to be a good hitter. I think Bryce Harper still has juice in that bat. I think Trey Turner, he's coming off a really good year last year, kind of turned back the clock a little bit. It's just tough to rely on all these things going right for you at the same time. And we'll see how I feel about them in terms of the greater division when we get to our actual standings predictions. But overall, like, if I'm a Phillies fan, I'm like, did we miss our window? I think we might have missed our window.
Yeah. Yeah, which is crazy to say about a team that truly is like so stacked at so many places and has been for years. Like the fact that they haven't been able to capitalize even once is crazy. I'd say, I mean, yeah, the clear and obvious answers, it's, to answer the question of like the biggest impact, it's going to be Kyle Schwarber. Like, without a doubt, he will produce the most positive statistics and the most impactful things on the field. I think if you're looking at the list of additions, maybe their hope is that they can get a bigger impact from Adolis Garcia. Because I'm like, if they can get him back to prime, who he was in 2013, I think he hit 50 bombs and he was a plus defender. Like, that can be a huge impact, arguably more impactful than a potential loss of a player like Schwarber. But the idea of that is slim. Like the idea that he reaches that type of a peak is slim. And so yeah, it's Kyle Schwarber, man. I mean, he's such a rock in that lineup, and he will continue to be a rock. And I feel like guys who are DHs who weren't built on speed are able to kind of prolong this, because I mean, he's just a barrel to ball kind of guy. Like he doesn't, if you can put the barrel on the ball, you're gonna hit it hard, and that's his whole thing. And I mean, we saw this past year, he was just raking. We saw, some of the stuff that he was doing at All-Star Weekend. It's like, that doesn't look like the type of thing that's just gonna like disappear overnight. Like it's gonna be some time before he's not a reliable power hitter, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think we all, you guys hit the nail on the head here. This offseason for the Phillies, it felt safe, with focus was on retaining some longtime contributors and adding around the fringes of the roster. They clearly see the gut-wrenching way they lost the NLDS as something that won't be repeated as long as everyone plays to their ability. So here's hoping, for the sake of Phillies fans, they're right. And so until we revisit them again in our division standings, we will close the book on the Phillies for now and move on to the New York Mets. So finished second last year, so they are second in our order as well. So the Mets entered 2025 as the offseason champs. Fresh new outfielder Juan Soto was ready to make his Mets debut after finally signing the massive contract he'd been waiting for. No question, the Mets had championship aspirations in 2025, but a lot went haywire for this team throughout the course of the season. Some everyday contributors missed significant time due to injury. Rumors of Juan Soto already being disengaged from the locker room swirled, and a roster that just didn't play to the potential that many saw for it. It all led to the Mets missing the postseason entirely. So while the season was dysfunctional, it felt not quite disaster, but you wouldn't know that if you looked at their offseason moves. So Matt, take a deep breath, get ready, and take us through the offseason moves for the Mets.
Yeah, so I mean, they maybe were the most active team of the offseason. I think it would not be far-fetched for me to say. So new faces that will be on the Mets this year. These are like all actual like notable names. Like sometimes we say notable and it's kind of like, well, sure. These are like all notable names. So right at the top, Freddie Peralta, starting pitcher. Marcus Semien in the trade from the Rangers, second base. We got Bo Bichette, who's apparently playing third base now. Obviously one of the key contributors for that Blue Jays team. We got Luis Robert, who the pod has talked about a lot over the past, couple trade deadlines. We got Jorge Polanco, Mariners legend. Devin Williams as the replacement for Edwin Diaz. And then Luke Weaver, who also operated, I believe, on the back end of that Yankees bullpen. So really trying to, shore that up after Edwin Diaz left and Helsley kind of wasn't who they wanted. As far as departures go, Pete Alonso's out. They no longer have the polar bear, Edwin Diaz, like I just mentioned. And then they kind of got rid of two, I mean, the guys they got rid of are all like the core of what we knew the Mets to be outside of Lindor, with Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil also leaving. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of change. The Mets are going to look, feel, play very different than they did before. But but yeah, I mean, we can dive right in. I think I'll start. I think I really like this. I think I really like these moves. I think that bringing in the fresh faces and the fresh perspectives, and it's a range of guys, both very veteran and young and up and coming. And I think that's going to play well for them coming into this season. So I'll release it back.
Yeah, I mean the Mets. I have not fully decided where I'm landing on the Mets, if they're going to be good or if they're going to be bad or if they're going to be mid. But I do know that they are one of the teams I am most interested in watching because, yeah, it's completely different. You said all the notable players that they added. Every player you mentioned that departed is a notable player as well. Like there's 10 names on here, 11 names on here that are all like names that baseball fans know very well. And so that's just interesting by default. They were also in, the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. They were involved. And so, yeah, I don't know, like losing Pete Alonso, losing Edwin Diaz, those are big, significant losses. But they did, replace them, whether like with Edwin Diaz, they just swapped him out for Devin Williams. Hopefully, they're hoping for similar production there. With Pete Alonso, it was more replacing in the aggregate Moneyball style, but like if the A's actually had money, because it's, Jorge Polanco, it's Bo Bichette, it's Marcus Semien, like they're not going to get the pop. Pete Alonso is one of the few bats that you can count on in Major League Baseball for, 30 plus bombs a year. But I think they might have improved. Like, I don't know. Like, the vibes were so horrendous for the Mets to end last season. That was really the story of their team, that I think this was necessary. And I think David Stearns is a guy, he came from the Brewers. Like, the Brewers are a team that has succeeded for the last 10-ish years based on vibes alone, it seems like.
Truly.
And so David Stearns to come in and be like, okay, you know what? I can fix these vibes. I trust him to do that. Like these names that have been added, I don't know of any of them being like clubhouse problems or anything like that. I do think it's interesting to watch last year's Yankees bullpen and go, that's what I want for my team.
Mm-hmm.
but I do think Devin Williams is good. I think he kind of had a fluky year last year. I think he'll be perfectly fine for them. Bo Bichette, it's only a 1-year deal, so like. It's like one of those opt-out deals, so like most likely a 1-year deal. So we'll see, if that ends up mattering. Freddie Peralta's only here for 1 more year on his deal. So if it doesn't work, we could see another offseason of sweeping changes. But I don't know. Like, this is a team I'm really interested to see play, and I think there's a good roster here, and I think if the vibes are as improved as it seems like they should be, then this will definitely be a good team.
Yeah, nice. I think that a lot of that makes a lot of sense to me. Let's talk about who makes the biggest impact. Okay, so which of these additions makes the biggest impact for the Mets and makes who's going to contribute most to making this year different than last year?
I'll start, and I'll take the boring one. I think it's Freddie Peralta. I mean, he's going to be their ace. Inherently so, he will have the most impact. Like, an ace is one of the most impactful players on a roster. I think Freddie Peralta, man. I mean, that's why you bring someone like this in, is to lead the pitching staff. So I for sure think Freddie Peralta's got to be the most impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think having an ace pitcher is kind of a key to being a successful team. And I saw it firsthand as a Red Sox fan. Like, we didn't have an ace for a few years there, and then Garrett Crochet comes in, and all of a sudden, every 5th day, you feel pretty good. That's a nice boost. And I think that's what the Mets are getting with Freddie Peralta. But I will choose, someone else just to have some fun. And I think that Bo Bichette is going to be an interesting addition to this lineup. He's not a high power guy. like Pete Alonso would be. He's allegedly going to play third base. We'll see, exactly how that works out. He is not a very good defensive shortstop. But this is a guy who, like, the ups and downs of his career, like, even the last couple of years, it's like, okay, what kind of Bo Bichette are they going to get? And if they get good Bo Bichette, dude, that lineup with Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto and then Bo Bichette, like, that's a nice top three right there. That's a really nice top three. So, yeah, we talk about, like, this is a team that everything went wrong at the end of the season, and they still were the second place team in this division. Not good enough to make the playoffs, but, like, the Phillies, if, like we just talked about, if they're not really improved and maybe even worse than last year, and the Mets improve that vibe, and Bo Bichette is out there raking, and Freddie Peralta is shoving every fifth day, this could be a fun Mets team.
Yeah. Absolutely. For sure. So it is a new look Mets. Once again, it's a new look Mets lineup, new look coaching staff a little bit. Manager's the same, but a lot of the coaching staff around the manager is different. So David Stearns, he ripped up 2025, tossed it in the trash along with several franchise icons. But I don't think, anyone can argue that the Mets dealt shrewdly. They improved their team meaningfully without having to sell the entire farm to do it. They used pieces that were already they already had in place to make these moves. So Mets fans, once again, are gearing up for a spring training where they can think that surely this time these Mets, this lineup, these pitchers are the right group to bring the World Series back to Queens. So we will see how that shakes out. But let's move on to the third team in our order, the third place team from last year, the Miami Marlins. So if there was one team that everyone thought would be a dumpster fire in 2025, the Marlins were it. We thought they might be. A lot of people thought they might be, for good reason as well. They were consistently predicted at the bottom of not only their division, but the entire sport. And, the Marlins, they were believed in by precious few outside of the city of Miami. To the surprise of all, including many people probably in Miami, they ended the season at almost 500. They did not have an all-out fire sale at the trade deadline, and they kept it interesting in this division, at least the middle part of the division, for much longer than they should have. So usually when a lowly team overachieves unexpectedly, that signals a busy offseason of trying to capitalize on that momentum. Usually that's what happens. So let's talk about what happened for the Marlins this offseason. Drew, take us through the offseason moves for the Marlins.
Yeah, so as always, the Marlins did not do a ton in the free agent world. They were a little more active in the trade market, but they added Pete Fairbanks to the bullpen. That's probably the most significant free agent signing they made. They also added Christopher Morel, a couple former Rays there. Notable that they are run by Peter Bendix, who came from the Rays front office. A team notorious for overachieving based on what you would think their roster would give you. So maybe we're getting, a little more of that here in Miami. They made a big trade for to trade away Edward Cabrera. That was probably the most significant move that they were a part of. And they got prospects back from the Cubs, including Owen Casey, who's, supposed to be the real deal there. So that was kind of their big addition, I would say. And then they also traded Ryan Weathers away to the Yankees. But they kept Sandy Alcantara. They kept Yuri Perez. This pitching staff is, they're still human beings that can throw pitches out there. It's not like they got rid of everyone that was, even possibly going to help them. And they got, a lot of production from young guys last year, where a team like the Marlins, where no one is shocked that they weren't super busy this offseason. And yet this is about as good as Marlins fans have felt about their team in quite some time, I would guess.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's again, it's interesting. I didn't know that they were run by a guy from the Rays organization, because it does feel reminiscent of that, where they make some trades where they might send a guy away and the initial reaction is like, oh my gosh, like they might have gotten fleeced on this one, whatever. And then those prospects they bring in end up really working out. And we saw that last year with Stowers and, kind of for a little bit, was it Jacob like Morrissey or something?
Marcy, yeah.
Marcy. And so they have these players who I think a lot of other teams either overlooked or just maybe didn't value as highly. But I mean, you would be hard pressed to find a hitter as consistent and as impactful as Kyle Stowers was last year, just in big moments and consistently hitting. He was awesome. And so you look at what they got in return from the Cubs for Cabrera, and you see like, okay, they maybe got some top prospects, and if they're saying that this guy's a top prospect, are we to trust them? Because they've turned in some pretty great prospects the last couple of years. And so, yeah, I think that, I don't know, they're a hard team to predict, because it's like they are still not a team where you look at this roster and you're like, wow, dude, they're great. But it is like one of those, like, do they constantly just like lure you in with optimism? Because that's how I always feel about the Rays, right? We talked about that last year. I'm sure we'll talk about that again soon. But it's like, you just can never say no to the Rays. And part of me wonders if we're going to kind of start seeing that with the Marlins. Like, maybe they're always just going to kind of be this feisty little team.
I have no idea, what this season will have in store for the Marlins, but, when it comes to that question, I think it's interesting. So, do we think that this Marlins team this year, is there a difference between what the Marlins are doing right now, which is, consistently trading away big pieces for less expensive pieces? Do we think that it's just that, or do we think they actually are trying to build something from the bottom up?
I mean, based off of, how the ownership has presented itself to operate the last few years, I'd say it's more being cheap than anything else. But I mean, never say never. I suppose if they are able to put something together, but it seems kind of commonplace in baseball that the teams that are cheap are going to be cheap. So I could definitely see that being the case. And with all these great prospects they're bringing in right now, I could definitely see, we should have an answer to that question, like a pretty firm answer, if they were to trade away a guy like Kyle Stowers in, a year or two. Because, you look at like Sandy Alcantara and it's like, dude, this is a previously Cy Young winning pitcher. And yeah, he had a kind of up and down year, but I'm like, wouldn't you want to kind of lock that guy up and have him be a staple of your rotation? Like, he's still quite young. So the fact that he's already been such a rumored trade piece is just one of those like, makes me think that maybe ownership is just being a little cheap and not wanting to lock guys up.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be a team that spends money, not in free agency. It's just never going to happen. Like they did it once, like 14 years ago or whatever, when they rebranded from Florida to Miami, and then they did 1 year of that. It didn't go well, and they traded all those players like immediately. So I just and just hiring someone from the Rays to run your front office is signaling like, I want to win cheaply if I'm going to win at all. Like, winning is not the priority here. And I think, unfortunately, I mean, that's a bigger conversation, but unfortunately that's the case for too many MLB teams. But it is, my problem with the Marlins is, I can be a little bit into them this year. Like, they showed us something last year. It was exciting. There are good pieces here. There are players that had breakout years last year and all that. But until they really push the chips in and spend and really upgrade the roster, they're never going to get further than like I'd say like a wild card berth, and even that is generous going into this year. I mean, the National League certainly has more teams than like that I would put in the playoffs over the Marlins. Like, you know, it just is what it is regarding a lot of baseball teams these days. But, you know, we can get excited about Kyle Stowers and we can get excited about Yuri Perez and Sandy Alcantara and see what happens. But yeah, until they really signal like, I want to be a winning team, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're getting around it. The Marlins had the kind of offseason that was equal to maybe the regular season we thought they would have in 2025, right? They had potential to cobble together a frisky wildcard contender, but instead they bottomed out on payroll once again, and they're setting themselves up potentially for another disappointing 2026 campaign. But we've said things about this team that are like that before, so maybe they've got something up their sleeve yet. We will see. But on to the fourth team in our order, the fourth place finisher from last year, the Atlanta Braves. So kind of the yin to the Marlins yang here. The Braves entered the 2025 regular season as a team that everyone thought would contend not only for the division, but for the NL pennant as well. Everything pointed to another contending year for Atlanta, but then it all came crashing down in a fiery mess when their star players underperformed almost across the board. The players who were supposed to help lift the team's floor were not enough to make up the difference at that point. So the Braves, most people's NL East champion preseason, missed the postseason altogether. So how to regroup after such a shocking downturn? So Matt, take us through the offseason for the Braves.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely got some new faces here, some guys that are well known to myself. So we go first to the bullpen, and we have, you know, their probable new closer, and well, they re-signed him, and then new setup man. So we're keeping Raisel Iglesias around, and then we're adding Robert Suarez, ex closer for the Padres. He'll be coming in. I believe they said he'll be operating out of the setup role. And so, you know, going back to where he was before, should be really good there. Bringing in Mike Yastrzemski, which is kind of a fun, I feel like, underrated signing, in my opinion. I kind of find it fun, especially with the injuries and issues they've had in that outfield. They have the Korean King himself, my boy Ha-Seong Kim, and then Mauricio Dubon. So that's kind of the big notable new names, new faces. As far as guys that are leaving, you know, Marcell Ozuna, I believe he just signed somewhere, the
Pittsburgh.
Pirates? Yeah, signed with the Pirates, so he's out of here. And then Charlie Morton either died or retired or something. I'm not honestly sure, but he's no longer going to be there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he said he's retiring, but he's old as shit, so, you know, he hasn't signed with anyone.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just talked about the Marlins having, you know, an exciting season, an unexpectedly good season, and then not doing anything, and how disappointing that is. And then the Braves had a really, really disappointing season, and then really didn't do a ton. I recognize the bullpen upgrades are certainly something. Ha-Seong Kim, bringing him back, he was there for like the last like month or two of the 2025 season. That's a good move, although I think is going to start the year injured. I'm not sure exactly how much time he's going to miss.
Just like he did last year.
Yeah, and like, so it's not like they made any huge moves, and yet I don't think they needed to, which is weird to say about a team that finished below 500 and in fourth place and behind the Marlins. But I mean, this is like kind of back-to-back years, that last year being far worse, of like a ton of things going wrong for the Braves. And that, it like, I don't think you can count on that for 3 straight years, but at the same time, you can't also count on magically everything going right. So it's, I'm not exactly sure how to feel about them. The bullpen should be great, especially the back end there. Suarez is a great addition for that team. Iglesias, keeping him around. He's been a solid closer for a number of years now. I like the rotation. Like, they didn't add anyone to the rotation, but Chris Sale won the Cy Young 2 years ago. Spencer Strider, hopefully they can get a full healthy season out of him. They've got like Schwellenbach. They've got these young guys. And I just trust the Braves to kind of like build a rotation. And then, you got Ronald Acuna Jr. there, and he's one of the very best players in all of baseball. You had down years from guys like Austin Riley, Michael Harris II, Matt Olson. You have Rookie of the Year, Drake Baldwin. Like, this is a team that, like, when everything is clicking, and as we know, when everything's clicking, like, they're one of the best teams in baseball, bar none. So I think my biggest concern is health, which, is maybe my biggest concern about any team, except the Braves more significantly so, because it's been a clear issue for the last couple of years. They do have a new manager as well. Brian Snitker retired, and Walt Weiss, who I believe was his bench coach, just took over. We'll see if that has an impact. But I think more than anything, it's getting full healthy seasons from Ronald Acuna Jr., full healthy season from Austin Riley, full healthy season from Ozzie Albies, full healthy season from Chris Sale, Spencer Strider. Like, these are what's the most important thing. I think you would be kind of silly to say that there's not a good team here, but I'm still in a place where, like, or I shouldn't say still, I'm like now in a place where, okay, I'm not going to give you the full benefit of the doubt. Like, I do need to see it to believe it again, because it has now been long enough. I know they did make the playoffs in 24, but it was really, they were kind of limping to the finish line and then got ousted by the Padres in 2 games. So I want to see the good Braves again. And if I see it in April, I'll be like, okay, the Braves are back. Like, I just, but I want to see it with my eyes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you brought up Ozzie Albies, because you listed so many guys where it's like, yeah, these are like kind of studs, or at least are recognized as studs, or even potential all-star guys, and that's still excluding. I mean, they missed 60 games plus a handful more from Jurickson Profar, who they signed in the offseason. Like, Reynaldo Lopez, who had a really great year the year before. I think he pitched 1 game before season-ending injury, or 2 games, something like that. So, like, it really was one of those just, like, injury-plagued teams that you can't imagine that there wouldn't be some positive regression purely on health alone, and a lack of suspensions thereof. But, like, yeah, I think that this is still a team. It's just like you said, they had kind of an underwhelming offseason, but that's because really they shouldn't need to make a big offseason. Like, their team, when healthy, when together, should still be a top 3, top 4 type of team in all of baseball. The talent is just that much, and they run that deep. I mean, that rotation has some really good guys in it. Chris Sale had a very resurgent year. Spencer Strider, we know who he is when he's at his best, and that lineup is as deep as they come. So I fully believe that the Braves are going to be right back. I predicted them to be a division winner, so I'll eat my words there from last year. But I think they're going to be good. I really do.
Yeah, it's that classic thing of, if the parents don't freak out, the kids don't freak out, right? The front office didn't panic and, overreact to this offseason. The fans aren't freaking out either. The baseball fans in general aren't freaking out about the Braves either. So that's what the front office did, was they didn't panic. And so the fan base, isn't panicked either. And I think that's a good idea. They're doubling down on their core of players here. They're not overreacting to what they clearly believe was an outlier season for their biggest stars. The bullpen got some strength added, and the front office decided to do most of their adding with players who, once again, do more to raise the team's floor than their ceiling. But it's going to be up to the core of this team to bounce back and return the Braves to contention. So however much you believe in those guys, the possibility of those guys to do that is how much you believe in the Braves. All right, let's talk about the last team in our order now as we move forward to the last place finisher from last year, the Washington Nationals. So another team that no one really expected much from in 2025, and unlike their division rival Marlins, they delivered on those expectations, finishing last in the division and completely revamping their front office in the process. So Nationals, they fired their longtime GM midseason and have brought in a youth movement in almost all key leadership positions in the clubhouse to replace the outgoing regime. So all this change, it's led to a team whose growth hit a bit of a bump in the road last season, but everyone's eyes kind of trained on the future here. So talking of the future, let's talk about the future potential of what they added in the offseason and, who they were able to, say goodbye to. So Drew, take us through the offseason moves for the Nationals.
Yeah, well, you touched on really the biggest offseason moves, and that was signing figuring out a deal, whatever, with a new GM, Paul Taboni, coming over from the Red Sox front office. And then the biggest additions, really, the biggest addition on the baseball side of things was catching prospect Harry Ford from the Mariners. They traded a reliever, I can't remember his name right now, Jose something. And then they traded away Mackenzie Gore, right? So they got some prospects back. I can't remember all their names. It was like 5 of them. But yeah, that brings me to the departures. Mackenzie Gore, who was the ace of this staff last year, is now on the Rangers. And they also lost Josh Bell, who gave them some, thump in that lineup relative to the rest of that lineup. And then Paul DeYoung, a veteran guy who, won't be around anymore. And yeah, it's full-blown youth movement at this time in the nation's capital. I'm looking at their depth chart on Fangraphs right now, and currently they have the same guy listed as their starting first baseman and starting second baseman, Luis Garcia Jr., who, don't get me wrong, he's a solid player, but he's not 2 players worth of a person. You need someone at one of those. That's not him.
Yeah, they could try.
So we'll see what they get there. And shout out to our biggest listener, my Uncle Bake. This is his team. And other than that, it's a really pretty boring team. I think there is potential for this team to be exciting in a few years, but really what they signaled by clearing out the front office, by getting a new manager and all that, is that previous rebuild, the rebuild where they traded away Scherzer and Trey Turner and Juan Soto, that rebuild didn't work. And now it's time for a new rebuild. Mackenzie Gore being traded signaled that. CJ Abrams rumors that are still going on signaled that. I don't expect this team to be very good from a wins-loss perspective, but it is an opportunity to see what these young guys can do. And unfortunately, when your team is all young guys and let's see what they can do, that's not usually the best recipe for not only for team success, but for like their development. Like, I think I would prefer to see more veteran presence on this team and take some pressure off these guys. And maybe the messaging in that locker room is, okay, guys, don't worry as much about wins and losses, and don't worry about the struggles of adjusting to being a major leaguer, and let's just go out there and play baseball. Like, that's great. But it does make me concerned, especially if CJ Abrams gets traded. Not that he's some like old grizzled veteran, but like he's one of the guys with the most major league experience on this team.
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see. But there are names to like. James Wood had a breakout year last year. I'd like to see more consistent, like less strikeouts and all that. He's slotting into DH right now because the outfield is Dylan Cruz and Wright. We want to see more from him. He was a top prospect. Dalen Lyle, who like sneaky was in the Rookie of the Year race by the end of the year. I don't know much about him, but I know he had a good second half. And then Jacob Young, who's a good defensive center fielder. Brady House is a prospect they're counting on. And then Harry Ford might take over the catching duties from Kyber Ruiz, who has not been a good major leaguer. You can kind of see the vision. I worry about the starting pitching. Miles Michaelis, who they just signed, which another addition, I guess we snuck in, is currently listed as their like number one starter, and he is not good anymore. And so I think they are going to give up quite a lot of runs this year, and I don't expect them to be good. And so, yeah, it's rebuild era number 2, back to back, which you never like seeing back to back rebuilds without an up build in between. But that's kind of where we are with the Nationals.
Yeah, man, I want to feel sympathy for them, but man, the cockiness I got on social media about that Juan Soto trade, and the Nationals Twitter account being like fleeced them. Y'all are trading all the pieces away that you got for the Juan Soto fleece, and yet we've seen at least some postseason success. We've seen some competitiveness, and I hope for the best for the Nationals in the future, but it does give me a little bit of I don't know the right word. I'm feeling a little bit mean about it, but like it makes me feel good a little bit. So I'll say that. I think that this team is going to be bad. I do. I think that, like you said, there's a lot of really exciting young prospects and guys that we're excited to see. And you mentioned him, but one of the guys that I think needs to step up is Dylan Cruz. Like, he I believe came out at the same draft as Paul Skeens, and there was conversations of like, is he a better pick than Paul Skeens? Is he all this stuff? And he was kind of the superstar at the college level, and I think it's time for him to be that at the pro level too. We know that the defense is there, and it's just a matter of that bat coming to life. But he really does feel like he's got like just tons of potential. I'm really excited to watch him this year and see if he can kind of turn into anything, because I do think that he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's really the offseason in a nutshell, and what Nationals fans should expect for this season too. This offseason, it reinforced that feeling that this team is focused on competing in the future, not right now. The most interesting thing about this Nationals team is watching how they rebuild the foundation of this organization from a process and philosophy standpoint. Right. So with all the fresh young leadership, the Nationals are hoping for a season that will be high in energy, though it may be low in wins. So why don't you guys take over here for the end? I feel like signaling that you can't hear me.
Every 15th word coming out of Dallas's mouth, but I see the mouth moving, and I know that for a fact he just summed up everything we just said so perfectly.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Dallas said.
All right. Well, I think, we're almost to the end of this episode, but we got to predict the final standings for this division, the National League East. So, Matt, why don't you walk us through how you think this division ends up?
Yeah, I can't lie. I think I have this exactly listed the way that I did last year. But it's because I really believe this is how I would rank the talent on the rosters. So I have the Braves finishing in first place once again. I do just believe they are the best team in this division. I believe they're one of the best teams in baseball. It would not shock me to see them be the first overall seed. I think that this team just has a lot going for them. Two for me is going to be the Phillies. Until proven otherwise, as much as I can be underwhelmed by their moves, as much as I can believe, maybe they're over the hill a little bit, they still won 96 games last year. It's a lot of games to win. And so until proven otherwise, I would have a hard time leaving them, far out of first place and also out of potential, playoff standing. They're going to be up there. Which for me then puts the Mets third. I do think that they're going to be improved. I still just think that they're relying a lot on, tapping into a lot of potential that, we need to still see if that'll work, right? Like you said with Bo Bichette, which Bo Bichette are we going to get? Luis Robert, which Luis Robert are we going to get? Marcus Semien, which Marcus Semien are we going to get? There's a lot of kind of unknowns and guys who have had some really big ups and some really big downs. So it'll be interesting to see there, but I have them finishing third. Marlins fourth. I just think, there's enough exciting guys there, and they showed a lot of kind of heart and a lot of grit last year to go on the streak that they did towards the end of the year, and really close the gap between them and the top, kind of 2-3 teams in that division. Obviously not the Braves or the Phillies, but and then last is got to be the Nationals. I don't think that they'll be necessarily 30 games behind, but I don't think that they're going to be good either. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that is the order I see them finishing. That's the order I'm predicting, but it's an interesting one. I'm banking on the Braves again. So, I guess second, third time the charm, something like that.
Yeah. My prediction is not too different from that. It's just slightly different. I want to point out last year the split, or the gap between first place and fourth place, that was the Phillies and then the Braves, was 20 games. And I imagine it'll be closer this year between first and fourth specifically. I do think the Nationals are going to get last place by a decent margin. I don't think this is a team that is even trying to compete in 2026, so I do think they'll be in last. And one of the worst teams in baseball. I that's just what I'm predicting.
Sorry to Drew's uncle.
Yeah, he can enjoy, the Twins or whatever, because they're looking real good. But I'm gonna do my biggest difference, actually my only difference with you, is I swapped first and second place. So I do think the Phillies, in the end, do win this division. They won it by so much last year, and they're not that different of a team. I know I said, it was an underwhelming offseason and even a disappointing offseason for them. But I think the pitching staff, Christopher Sanchez, is an absolute beast at the top. Zach Wheeler, if he comes back healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. That 1-2 is as good as anyone's 1-2 in baseball. And then Jesus Luzardo also had a really great year for them last year. Yeah. So that top three is kind of enough, even if I don't like the depth as much as I did. And I think that lineup will knock the ball around. I think they've got 1 year left where I can, talk myself into them going on a playoff run. That could be a World Series run. It's not like they got absolutely embarrassed by the Dodgers in the playoffs, and so I like the Phillies. I have the Braves in second, so it just kind of flipped what you said. I do believe in the Braves. We'll see. I haven't made my decisions on who the wild card teams will be yet. I think that we'll save that for much closer to the actual regular season. But I do think the Braves are a good team that has gotten really unlucky, and I think their luck just by default has to turn around to some degree. The Mets, I have them in third. I don't really know what to make of the Mets. I wouldn't be shocked if they got first. I wouldn't be shocked if they got fourth. I don't know, but I think in the end, it's a decent team that is not that exciting, at the end of the day. So, like you said, you're counting on getting the good version of a lot of people, and it's a lot of people that we've seen bad versions from. Like, what Juan Soto will give you, what Francisco Lindor will give you. Outside of that, at least with the lineup, you don't know for sure what you're getting. You've seen bad versions of every player in this lineup, where
even the bullpen.
Oh yeah, the bullpen too, and like the starting pitching. Besides Freddie Peralta, I trust in him, but like you're relying a lot on young starting pitching. I just don't like the amount of faith I would have to have for me to pick the Mets to be higher than third right now. This is one that I like. We haven't done the other divisions, but I think this is like one of the ones where I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked to be wrong, like about this division in general. I just don't really know. And then the Marlins in fourth, I think they're clearly better than the Nationals. I think they're clearly not as good as these other teams in this division. I know they did finish in third last year, but I just don't. Like, I don't expect back-to-back years of the Marlins vibes going up, and they would have to go up again for them to finish above fourth place is kind of my take on it. So, again, not too different from yours. I have first and second flipped, but that's kind of how I see it going down.
All right. Well, that's how it's going to go down from our perspective. So thank you for joining us for this week's baseball episode of Dingers and Stingers, our NL East preview episode. We'll be back with another division preview. Last year we did like we did NL East, AL East. We might do it the same way. We might do it different. Not sure yet, but we should be back next week with another division to talk about. So whatever division that will be, you'll have to stay tuned to find out. But that'll do it for this week's episode. Make sure to check out our football episode that comes out also this week. Check that out as well. You can follow us on Instagram at Dingers and Stingers. You can follow us on TikTok at Dingers and Stingers as well. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube where you are watching this. You can make sure to like this video, share it around, all that good stuff. You can listen to us audio only on Spotify. Our episodes also go up there. So lots of ways to get our podcast into your life, into your ears, and into the ears of people that you think might enjoy it. So yeah, share us around. We'd love to grow the community here. But for now, we will let us know in the comments how you think this division is going to end up. We want to hear from you. So let us know your standings, your predictions here, anything we might have missed when we're talking about any of these teams. We want to hear it. So, but that'll do for this week's episode. So until next time, take care. We'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.